Yeah, I'll call the meeting to order. Let's get my agenda up here. Before the formal part of the meeting, we have several 3-minute delegations in relation to the agricultural issue that we're dealing with. And the first one is Andrew Mikulski. Andrew, you know the drill with the mic. It is a 3-minute delegation with limited discussion. So the floor is yours, Andrew.
That's on? Yes, Emory was this evening. He asked me about reading. Get one. Dear members of council, on Thursday, April 4th, in Napanee Beaver, I saw a notice entitled Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendments, Notice of Public Meeting. The purpose was stated as proposing amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw for the purpose of protecting agricultural lands. In the Napanee Beaver notice, it states under how to participate, any person may attend the public meeting and or make written or verbal representation, either in support or in opposition to the proposed amendments. I must say it was very difficult to understand the notice. Therefore, I saw that there was additional information relating to the above public meeting through Cindy Hike, Development Services Clerk. It says in the notice, including information about appeal rights, to contact Cindy. Cindy told me that this was my chance to give a verbal or written presentation at the public meeting to be able to appeal the decision of the township's amendments of the official plan. I asked how long would I have to speak. She said, talk to Brandy. I phoned Brandy and she stated because there was a lot of interest, 5 minutes would be all the time allowed. I said it would be very difficult to give my submission in 5 minutes. I'll need more time. She said, sorry, that's all the time we can slot. I talked to both MAFRA and MMAH, and they both confirmed that if I do not make a submission, then I lose my right to appeal the amendments being proposed at this meeting. Therefore, my submission was centered on the notice of the Napanee Beaver, which states once again, any person may attend the public meeting and or make a written or verbal representation, either in support or in opposition to the proposed amendments. On May 6th, I was the first one to present. I asked Reeve Wise how much time I would be given because I was told only have 5 minutes. Reeve Wise said he wanted to give people there a chance to speak, so take your time. My submission was in opposition to the proposed amendments, which was stated in the notice in the way to submit, and given verbally by way of Cindy Hike to that regard. Throughout the public meeting, Reeve Wise continued to state that the purpose of the meeting was to receive input from the community on what ideas we have to give on protecting prime farmland. This was not what the notice in the Beaver stated. If it was not the intent to receive ideas, input, then it should have been clearly stated. It was not. Therefore, the public meeting was not held in accordance with the Municipal Act of Ontario, and further, the conduct of the chair was also not in accordance with the Municipal Act either. Therefore, in the public's interest, the public meeting should be held again in the right structural manner, or otherwise it could be protested. We were told by Reeve Wise to come up with a plan, and that is what our committee is presently doing. We will present that plan to council in the near future. It was not part of our plan or the purpose of the public meeting to present a plan there. Just another note, the Prime Agriculture Farmland, the group that's been working on this, has the full support of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, the Christian Farmers Association of Ontario, and the National Farmers Union. To be classified as a full-time farmer, you must be part of one of the above associations. It is welcome that the County Council on June 19, 2024, with a report overviewing the budgetary, staffing, and resource requirements applicable to consider the completion of the Lear and Ailes study. Let me remind Council that the provincial policy statement is issued under the authority of Section 3 of the Planning Act and came into effect on May 1st, 2020. In respect of the exercise of any authority that affects the planning matter, Section 3 of the Planning Act requires that decisions affecting planning matters shall be consistent with policy statements issued under the Act. The question is, when will the Township of Stone Mills be consistent with the above policy? I look forward to your reply. Signed, Edward Embry.
Thank you, Andrew. And the next presenter is Jacob Ellens. Jacob, you know the drill with the mic. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Reeve Wise. Let me begin by saying that what I'm going to say are just a few comments that I put together today while doing a whole lot of other things. So this is, I'm not terribly well prepared, so I don't mean to insult you with ill-prepared comments, but I'll do the best I can. First, I want to say a few things, a brief reflection about the purpose of the public information meeting. And I see here, I hadn't spoken with Mr. Embry, so we cover some of the same area. At that meeting, of course, we were looking at amendments that were being proposed by council to amend both the official plan as well as the 2014 bylaw. At that time, several of us who spoke were critical that the criteria that were given to restrict severances were ambiguous and overly wide. But I do want to add that we were glad, I certainly am very glad, that council wanted to restrict development on class 1 to 3 soils. Two notable things about the May 6th meeting that I'd like to highlight. One, I think that the Reeve acknowledged that there is a problem with the loss of farmland, and that's something of concern to you, to the council. Secondly, something I appreciated is that he praised those of us in the community for the work that we've been doing in the last year, alerting the council and the community of the need to protect prime farmland. Summary on this, I think that the Reeve assured us that the full council was now on side in the determination to protect as much class 1 to 3 farmland as possible. That takes us to tonight. We're dealing with a recommendation from Mr. Sands that council not move to vote on the amendments introduced on the 6th of May. That's curious in some ways. On the 6th of May, our Reeve saw those same amendments as the way to halt the rampant development of class 1 to 3 soils. So what has changed? Mr. Sands now thinks the safest thing is to go on with the status quo. Part of that status quo, there's right now some 500 acres of class 1 to 3 soil in Moscow, designated as prime agricultural land. At the same time, in the southern part of our township outside of Moscow, there's some 24,000 acres of class 1 to 3 soil that since 2014 have been designated as rural, allowing both severing and building allowed. Suddenly, it seems to me, Mr. Sands feels that those of us pressing for protection on prime soil have not really contributed anything. According to him, we submitted only one written submission. Those of us who've read this morning were startled. There were actually 4 of us who submitted, Mr. Embry, Mr. Goodyear, Mr. Mahalski, and also Mr. Donaldson gave an oral presentation, did not provide anything written, and Ms. Browski gave an oral presentation and has since submitted a written one. So I think that's one of the things that's concerning, that we wonder whether what we're doing is actually being taken seriously. Now, Mr. Sands and presumably our Reeve believe we can go on as we are until the county does a land survey for us. In fact, I recognize it as something of a victory that you are now recognizing that our land zoning is in trouble. But in the 2 to 5 years it may take before the county can carry out its surveying, land will continue to be severed. I believe that right now there's something like more than 50 applications for severances on the books. Now, I'm not going to put Mr. Sands on the spot. I think but I would like to know of that land, how much of it is class 1, 2, and 3 land. But what I will say is in future, I think it's fair game that I or others of us should ask at a meeting like this exactly how much land that's now being considered for severances is actually class 1, 2, or 3 lands. If we're at all serious about saying that we really value this prime farmland, we better know how much of it is being carved up for development. One last thing. Mr. Sands made the claim that council had received only one written submission from the May 6th meeting, which is what I mentioned earlier. It's a curiosity to me that he didn't even mention in his introduction in his report, but one submission that actually was given was a summary given by Mr. Mahalski on May 6th. It was a brief by professional planner Kevin Dubé, with whom we've spoken about our land zoning. Mr. Duguay, rather, the planner, had provided us with a brief that Mr. Mahalski then summarized and gave in its entirety to you in council, and certainly in particular to Mr. Sands and to our Reeve. Now, one of the most startling things Mr. Duguay concluded about how our township zoning works is how it's related to the provincial policy statement, and this is a quote, that he could not identify any policy of the 2020 PPS that would support the proposed amendments proffered by our council. And that would be true too to the rural zoning that came before those amendments. Now, you don't need to agree with Mr. Dugay's conclusion, but I would just humbly suggest that not even to mention that you have it, that you thought about it, I think is an insult to him, and it's an insult to those of us who are trying to do what we can to urge you to protect our farmland. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Ellens. I think at this point, it would only be fair to address this confusion about written submissions. I think it's just a misunderstanding. Jason, do you want to elucidate the situation in terms of written submissions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize for those of you in the audience, members of council, and any member of the public who is confused by this, because there's an error in my staff report that's on this evening's agenda. The error speaks, or the staff report, as we've heard from Mr. Ellens, very eloquently speaks to receiving one written submission. That text was errantly included to say that there was one written submission received before our statutory public meeting on May 6th, in which we heard lots of input from members of the community, and we received printouts for our consideration through this process. So that was an error on my end, and I apologize for that. It was received in advance of the stat public meeting. Through you, Reeve-wise, if I may, just to confirm, I don't have a number off the top with respect to the total number of severances in 2024 on agricultural lands that are identified by the CLI for 1 through 3 soils. However, you're slightly off with your estimate of 50 applications to date. We received 28 applications this year for severances. That includes lot additions, easements, and lot creations. So there'd have to be a further analysis completed to understand how many of those are on the 1, 2, and 3 soils. However, there is by no means 50 new lots that have been proposed to date. Thirdly, the other point that I'd like to raise is the commentary received by Mr. Kevin Duguay, registered professional planner out of the Peterborough area. I've reviewed his submission, and I understand what his conclusions are. And they are consistent with what I would recommend as a registered professional planner as well. I think the information that he's been asked to provide comment on has been misleading, in my opinion. He's quoted very accurately many provincial policy statement provisions that apply to prime agricultural designated lands. And creating lots for residential uses or any other non-agricultural uses in a prime agricultural designation is contrary to the provincial policy statement. I will stand here and look at every one of you in the eye and agree, and I'll defend it at the Ontario Land Tribunal. That's what he is saying, and I will say the same. So that's why I'm in the opinion that his request for comment has been inaccurately provided. He has provided some commentary in which we heard at the May 6th stat public meeting respecting pulling out some of the uses that may not be appropriate for agricultural lands. For example, wayside pits, quarries, agricultural asphalt plants. That's great. We've used the rural zoning, as you know, and Ms. Wortman from Arcadis confirmed that at the last meeting. Those are helpful comments, and we're taking those under consideration as we proceed. However, what has been presented to the public to date has been an official plan amendment and zoning amendment as an interim measure to hopefully reduce the fragmentation of farmland that is not designated currently prime agriculture, rather designated rural. And I would be happy to have a meeting with Mr. Duguay or any of you in the audience this evening to have that discussion. I've not been afforded that opportunity to date. Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to keep talking about this. The last public meeting isn't the only chance for input. We will have to have another one when we get the Lennox and Addington result, and that will be fairly soon. Stephanie Brahotsky, you're the next presenter. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Reeve Wise. Now, I understand from the communication that went out on the portal that you feel you've fulfilled your public requirements for an information session, so I could be wrong about that, but that's what I read, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
hang on.
let's get down to this.
Yeah, just 1 second, Stephanie.
I just, thank you, Reeve Wise. The only reason I would like to interject is my recommendation on the staff agenda this evening is exactly contrary to that statement.
Okay,
My recommendation before council tonight is that council seek additional public input from the broader community respecting the draft official plan amendment and zoning amendment following a decision of county council.
okay, thank you. Oh, there hasn't been an awful lot of time to react to what you put out. It's quite miraculous that we're here tonight, so. Okay. I just want to say first, and I've handed this out to everybody, you have a copy of it. It's called the Framework for a Zoning Bylaw Amendment. You wanted some ideas, so I have some. Okay, and the first thing I want to say is that in proposing your own zoning bylaw and OP amendments, you have already recognized the existence of lands categorized as category 1 to 3, and you've attempted to give them special status with the proposals. However, the conditions and specifics of the proposed amendments are non-compliant with the PPS and the Stone Mills OP. Therefore, council must continue to recognize the status of these lands in order to become compliant with the PPS and your OP. Now, so I'm proposing that an alternate zoning bylaw, excuse me, amendment be developed to address the following concerns and information. So first of all, I think you need to immediately rezone and protect prime agricultural lands with categories 1 to 3 classification as identified by the Arcadis map or by Ontario GeoHub, or your previous zoning of prime ag, which is dependent on information that I'm supposed to acquire by tomorrow from my Freedom of Information request. Okay, so tomorrow is the 30th day since I submitted that application for a Freedom of Information. And so I'm hoping to get some information that's going to enlighten me as to how this land was originally zoned rural from prime agricultural. Okay, then I think that you need to, I believe, you need to notify all residents immediately that no new applications for severance or development will be accepted or processed for parcels zoned CLI 1 to 3. Rezoning of all class 1 to 3 lands as prime ag should be in effect until such time as a new zoning bylaw amendment and land use schedule is created, approved, and put into effect by one of the following procedures. One possibility, completion and approval of a county-wide LEAR or AILS study, or a township committee representing all affected parties as described below, to create a plan for prime agricultural areas within Stone Mills. Create a development plan to identify and designate class 4 to 7 areas for suitable development. That's your job. Nobody has designated a plan for where you want development to occur or where that development should occur. And any study with respect to agriculture and development should also include protection for environmentally sensitive areas and groundwater sources, in particular, the Camden East Significant Groundwater Recharge Area, and also address the impending overcapacity of township landfills. Okay, a second recommendation.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, convene planning sessions with representatives of OMAFRA, the MOECP, the MMAH, et cetera, and members of the farming community and other concerned parties to identify prime agricultural areas according to provincial policy to include farm-related activities and businesses which need not be on CLI class 1 to 3 lands. Allow for severances in order to annex severed farmland to adjacent farmland with a different owner for the purpose of farming. Identify potential areas on marginal land to be zoned for development. And I would encourage active farming on prime ag lands by disallowing farm tax rates on farmland not given over to farming or farm-related activities. I don't know if this is legally possible, but it's worth studying. Okay.
Pretty well up there.
Okay. And to finish up, if possible, and in conjunction with the above ministries, develop a set of objective and well-defined criteria for determining whether a parcel of land within a prime agricultural area may be severed or developed. And I think we owe people that much, that if you own land and you want to sever, you should have that option if it meets a strict set of criteria. Some of those criteria could be the following.
Yeah, I think I've
Time's
given
up.
I've given you an extra minute and
Thank
a half
you.
there. So
Okay.
we have your written
You all have
submission.
copies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And Wayne Goodyear, you're the final presenter in the 3-minute delegations. Go ahead, Wayne, you know the drill.
Thank you. I believe you have a copy, thanks to Brandy's efforts, of my one question. That's the focus of my brief comments. So the question is, and this is absolutely vital to all of us, is it council's position that the report prepared by Mr. Vitalis in the past for OMAFRA in 2006 is the current and governing agricultural land designation on which subsequent bylaws and procedures with respect to land designation in Stone Mills Township, including current efforts at amendment, have been based? That's absolutely vital. Has there been anything else since then done? And did it supersede, does it replace the 63 material and the material that informs the provincial policy? It's absolutely vital. If it does, that's really good news. If it's a detailed study and it informs us with criteria, that's really helpful. And that dissolves a lot of misunderstandings. Because critical to everything are criteria. And I never speak from my notes, I should. I wrote to John concerning the criteria that were missing in the posting in the Beaver. And John said, that's part of the reason that we'll have the meeting, Wayne. We're going to work out some more details and try to get nuanced understandings of what these things are there in the posting. The posting contained no criteria. If I was a major farmland owner, I would be incensed that it's going to get worked out somehow in a discussion format, because the criteria for you to evaluate my land have to be ones I can understand and are measurable. Measurable criteria. I'm not class 1 because it's too wet, too long in the spring. I'm not class 1 because of slope. I'm not class 1 because of the makeup of the soils itself. I'm not class 1 because of the small nature of my holdings. I've got too many small patches that are separated out. None of that was there. Said, okay, it's going to emerge in the bylaw language, except when John told me that, the bylaw was already written. And that's the language we then dealt with at a public meeting. And that was kind of discouraging. So you need criteria. So it's very important, in fact, it's vital, that we get a hold of the OMAFRA report prepared by Valitis. And it doesn't help us to know that he's retired. Wonderful, he's retired. OMAFRA is the Ministry of Agriculture. They don't burn the file boxes when someone retires. So that's unhelpful. Could we please make sure that in the Freedom of Information requests or subsequent to that, you get a look at his report? Because if his report has criteria that he used to evaluate the land, that's wonderful. Based on the nature of the land, yes. If it doesn't have that, then the previous designations for the land are in place. They rule. They haven't been replaced by an OMAFRA review. So we have a problem if that report can't be found or didn't get handed in or didn't mention criteria, but the last is most important. And the criteria that have been
Time.
mentioned.
Time, Wayne. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just take 30 seconds, wrap up if you've got a bit more.
And The only second-hand information that's come out is that there was a judgment made by the team that went around about appropriateness of land. And that's difficult to understand, not defined. And so I'm back to John and myself and anybody else who can help is let's get some of these criteria defined. What does appropriateness mean when you're doing land classification designations? Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Wayne. So I think if council will agree, Jason's got a report addressing these and other issues. And we can raise with Jason some of these questions. We've all got notes here at that time. And I just want to assure you that there's nothing pre-decided. There was no bylaw written meant to be passed at that previous meeting. These are discussion points. Everything is malleable. Everything is adjustable, subject to your input, subject to council input, subject to expert opinion, including review of past decisions, such as the, I will call it bizarre, rezoning or reclassification, whatever you want to call it. Well, it may be to some people. So all that will be looked at, and its relevance to the current policy development process will be taken into consideration. One thing I will say is that the attempt by Jason and Arcadis to come up with an interim means of gaining some control, which Jacob, you and I originally discussed, which was limited severances on agricultural land to address the concern of farmers who want a lot or two for family or for whatever purpose. That was thoroughly trashed at that meeting by your presentations. Waste of time, Band-Aid, diversion, all that we can consider is a rezoning of those lands, which according to our expert opinion, can't be done very quickly. So the attempt was to gain some time with a process that would at least limit severances. It would be a bit complicated. It would require an agricultural evaluation of a severance on land that's being farmed or that could be farmed. All those details await discussion. So I was a little bit frustrated, and I admit I was frustrated at that meeting because it kept going around in circles. No, you simply got to rezone everything that used to be prime ag, and you can do it like that. Well, you can't. Unless you've got professional expert opinion that somehow trumps what we have, that's going to take a lot of time, starting with the county, as you are aware. So council is on side with everyone's intent that has been presenting here, which is to protect farmland in the township. It's the how that we're wrestling with. And I would encourage you to continue to criticize and to comment, but also recognize the practical limitations that we're functioning under. And I am hoping that Jason will talk to the planner, is it Mr. Duguay, and compare notes. And maybe he's got something that will enlighten Jason. We don't know. It's a process. So I'm hoping you will be patient with us. I apologize if I have not been entirely patient with you. I get excited sometimes. I will ask council to give me a motion to receive the 3-minute delegations this evening. Crystal and Rob, all in favor? Did you have any? Oh, is that the?
I have a letter, yes, that was supposed to be a delegation, but Leonard Austin could not attend because he's farming.
Right, so just
they asked
as
if I could
Andrew
speak it.
presented for Ed, yeah, you can read
Yeah,
that out.
do you
Is
want
that
me
all right
just-
with you at that point? Yeah, it wasn't exactly on the
So
agenda.
then this is on the note, I guess part of the report said, let me see, that there's a lack of awareness from the broader farming community. So I'll just read this. Dear Reeve, John Wise and Council, the Lennox and Addington Federation of Agriculture represents over 350 family farm businesses in Lennox and Addington. We are a local branch of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, which has 38,000 farming members across the province. We advocate on behalf of farming families who, as we speak, are working around the clock to get crops in the ground for the growing season. We cannot be here tonight due to the time sensitivity of planting crops, but we urge you to stay the course with plans to re-examine how your farmland can be better preserved with improved land use planning policy. Ontario's limited supply of farmland is a scarce resource, making up less than 5% of all of the land in the province. It's vital that Ontario has a strong, viable, and sustainable supply of food products grown, harvested, and processed right here at home. Farmland losses are already at a rapid pace. The current rate of loss is measured at 319 acres per day in our province, according to the 2021 Census of Agriculture. These losses are not sustainable. Agriculture and food in Ontario is a major economic driver, contributing $47 billion annually to the provincial economy and employing nearly 1 million Ontarians through skilled labor trades, technology, innovation, and more. The loss of thousands of acres of agricultural land has the potential to jeopardize our domestic supply chain and local food production. The impact will be felt on consumers today and for future generations. With a responsible land use planning approach, we believe it is possible to build complete communities that can provide for the needs of residents while minimizing sprawl, preventing the loss of farmland, and avoiding additional pressures on urban-rural boundaries. The key is a collaborative approach to responsible long-term land use planning that balances meeting housing needs and supporting economic growth with protecting agricultural land. We recognize that the balancing act between farmland protection and further urbanization doesn't come with a quick or easy answer, and that the issues facing us today are complex. However, we believe now is the time to act, and together we can develop smarter farmland policies. Sincerely, Leonard Austin, the president of Lennox and Addington Federation of Agriculture.
Thanks, Crystal Lee. Did we get a vote on that? Okay, so I had a mover and seconder though. So all in favor of receiving all those submissions? That's carried, thank you. Now, before we proceed to the confirmation of the agenda, I have a happy announcement. We've been without a CAO in this township for, I would say, over a year now. And Jason has acted ably and under great duress as our acting CAO during that time. And frankly, it has been too much to expect for him to fulfill all those duties. So he will be as happy as anyone that we have hired Jason White, who will commence his duties on or about the 13th of June. Jason, I've known for a long time. He was an administrator at the county in the IT department. Recently was head of IT at Utilities Kingston. And he has long been seeking an administrative position in a smaller community. And it looks like we found a match. So that's, I guess, the official announcement, and that'll be going out on social media and so on, I hope, tomorrow. So we're looking forward to working with Jason. Yes, indeed. It's been a long time. Okay. Can I get confirmation of the agenda, please? A mover and seconder, Doug and Sherry. Yes, sorry, as amended, because we've added an item under number 10. Items for consideration, which is a donation request, I believe, from Nimbert School. Yeah. Okay. So all in favor of that? Oh, I need a mover and seconder first, apparently. Crystal Lee and Sherry, all in favor. That's Gary, thanks. So we've got a number of meeting minutes to approve. The first is our conflicts of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Anyone feeling conflicted? None declared. So the first one is our 659th session of regular council on May 6th. Can we get that one approved, please? Doug and Sherry, all in favor? That's carried. Any discussion from those minutes? None declared. Confirmation of the minutes from our public meeting held May 6th. Mover and seconder, Wendy and Doug, any discussion? All in favor? Those are carried. And finally, confirmation of the minutes from our committee of the whole meeting from the 8th of May. Yes, Brandy has a comment on that one.
I received a comment from a council member that the seconder from the recorded vote about the live streaming being kept up wasn't in there. However, that's just a glitch with the iCompass program. You can't put a seconder specifically, so I'll just include that as a note in the minutes.
Okay, thanks, Brandy. Did I get a mover and seconder on that one? Sherry and Wendy, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, the 15-minute delegations. We have one, John Neisman, update on organized charity events. John, do you want to come up to the microphone, please? Just press this. Oh, it's already on. So the floor is yours,
It's on.
John. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the last time I was in front of this group was on April the 2nd. There was some confusion about rental of the Enterprise Hall. So I've got nothing but good news. So there's a handout, I think everybody has, there's 2 pages. So we've changed the name. So after April the 2nd, we were calling our volunteer group the Enterprise Community Charity Events. We've changed it to Stone Mills. Our focus is in all of Stone Mills. Our location we've selected is Tamworth Arena. So we're currently using the upstairs banquet area or banquet hall. So we've had 3 games nights there, 3 canteens at the same time, and 2 benefit breakfasts. So the numbers have gone up from Enterprise to Tamworth. Our volunteers were concerned the numbers would go down. We wouldn't have a following, but the numbers are going up. So that's all positive. So we've raised in Tamworth since we moved April and May, $2,932. We haven't retained or kept any of that money. So the second last breakfast that we did, so on April the 20th, we had 157 people attend. We attended. We generated $1,075 in total profit. That money was brought into the township office here to help with the cost of the dugout steel roofs. So that was on April the 20th. And then just past Saturday on May 18th, we generated $920 for the Love of Farrell's volunteer group. So in 2 breakfasts, we already generated $19.95, so almost $2,000. So that's all kind of positive stuff. So that's all I wanted to basically say about our group changing the name without boring too much about numbers. So far, everything seems to be going really well. Our volunteers really like the hall at Tamworth. So hopefully that can continue. So the second thing I wanted to discuss is I have a few pictures, and I just wanted to kind of go through. I was here when your building inspector presented, I'm sorry, I can't remember what it's called, draft facility rental policy. So I just basically reviewed it. I've got some input, just want to share some pictures. So it's not my opinion, it's people that have come to the functions and a lot of our volunteers. So we have anywhere from 15 to 25 volunteers that have helped at some of these different events. So I just wanted to basically share, because I don't think everyone on council has been to the Enterprise Hall nor seen the different events that we do and how we lay it out. So by providing a few pictures, I think it will probably help what we've envisioned or experienced at the building without being too boring. So in 5 months at Enterprise Hall, we attracted 1,143 people. We've hosted 3 different types of events. So the first event is a family games night, which includes a canteen. The second event that we do, the 3rd Saturday of every month, is a benefit breakfast. And then the third thing that we did was for Jay Dearborn, we had one special meal, and that was Valentine's chicken dinner. So 3 different types of events at the same hall and kind of laid it a little bit differently. So with the draft that Mr. Lettler provided, there's a point, I think it's called 6.4, and it says no signs, balloons, or other decorations at the event shall be hung on the walls. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is the 16.2 Enterprise Hall, tables and chairs set up for the purpose of sitting down to dine shall not be permitted on the wooden floors and shall be restricted to the tile area. Food can be consumed on the hardwood floor and buffet tables are permissible. So I would just ask you, Reeve Wise, and council to consider the following recommendations from our volunteer group. So I don't know, it probably makes sense if we can just go through, there's basically a slide of like 7 pictures. Is that okay? Okay, so the first picture that you see there is a picture of the hall. So that's the current state when you rent Enterprise Hall. So that's from the stage. So I'm standing on the stage. So if you look stage right kind of thing, that's the tile area they're referring to. The railing is where the bar is, and then the seating goes down that side. And then on the left-hand side or stage left, those are tables and chairs that are always set up on the hardwood floor. So if you rent Enterprise Hall, that's the way you walk in to see the building. So if we can go to picture number 202. So this setup is the way our volunteers have laid out for a breakfast, for a benefit breakfast. So you'll notice I'm at the other end now. So this is the entrance walking in. So now the left side is the tile, the right side is the hardwood floor. So you can see we've got, with the tables and chairs set up for breakfast, it's 120 seating area positions for breakfast. So if you go to slide number, I guess it's called number 04. So once again, you're back to the normal rental setup. I'm not sure why I have that twice, I apologize. So the next picture, number 5. So this is games night, which is another one of the events. So that ping pong table is the front entrance when you walk in the building. You can see that you've got lots of tables and chairs set up, and there's also people up on the stage with puzzles. I don't know if it comes up in the pictures, but some of those folks will buy food from the canteen and play euchre or whatever games. So they may have French fries, a drink, a hot dog, that sort of thing, and they'll eat it there while they're playing. So that, I don't know if that shows up in the photo. The next picture shows the setup for the dinner for Jay Dearborn. So this was set up for Valentine's Day. There was 108 meals sold, pre-sold tickets. So on stage, this is once again from the stage side. So stage right, you'll see the serving area down the tile. So basically from the bar down is where everyone comes in. On the far end, closer to the back wall or the front wall, I guess you should say, is where all the takeouts were. So there's no real seating area for people when it's set up like that, when you're selling both dine-in and takeout. So you have people coming in, they basically come up that side where the poles are, where some people refer to as the addition of the Enterprise Hall. And they come up that way, they submit their tickets, they get their takeout, and if they're dining in, then they come up and get served and sit down. So that's just the setup for if you're doing an actual dinner at the Enterprise Hall. Then there should be one more picture, number 8. Oh, sorry. Kind of a redundant picture. So that's the actual dinner where adults are sitting in that center section enjoying the meal. And you'll see behind them is the serving area where we're serving the food, which is by the bar area. And then the next picture, I believe, is going to be the breakfast setup. So you can see the breakfast setup. Same idea. You've got tables down. It's set for, once again, 120 settings, and we serve roughly 150 to 160. So when they come for breakfast. So we're utilizing all of the hardwood and some of the tile area, but the tile area is taking up, the serving area takes up roughly 3/4 of that tiled area. And I think that's the last picture. There might be one more of the, yeah, just sitting and eating breakfast. So you can see it's basically full with the seating capacity and serving the people. No one has takeout for breakfast. They all eat in. So that's it for the boring slides. So what I've got here is I've got, please consider the following recommendations from our volunteer group. So my point number 1 is to consider removing section 6.4. Allow signs and decorations, but use a specific tape, like a 3M removable tape that won't harm any paint finish or walls. And obviously the reasoning is signs are necessary for charity events, band sponsor, event sponsor, where the benefit is who's getting the credit and information. So for example, there was a dance not that awful long ago there was a band playing and there was a banner that was up above behind the band facing the dance floor. Our experience in the past, if you have a band that's playing or a comedian or anything like that, you typically will get a sponsor. That sponsor wants to be advertised. So if we don't allow any type of signage, it's going to be harder for that band or that person. Or if someone is sponsoring, if there's a business that's sponsoring that band, they would like to have the recognition. So 3M and other brands make like a removable tape. So you can temporarily put something up, just remove it. It doesn't hurt the wall. And that's something I would just ask to consider, so you could have signs up if need be. The second point number 2, our volunteers are asking to consider removing 16.2, which is allowing tables and chairs on the hardwood floor and tile floors as the bylaw currently states. Without getting too much, there's a 1.1 and 1.2 where it's basically saying they want the community social activities to engage healthy community and to promote municipal facilities. Our volunteers wanted us to put that in. Basically, all they're saying is, based on the pictures that you have seen, the way we laid it out, we would not be able to have any of those 3 functions based on Mr. Detler's presentation. Because if you're not permitted to have food or set up for dining on the hardwood floors, you're limited to the tile, which is roughly 35 people. So then Enterprise Hall isn't really rentable in our opinion, because you're going to feed a lot more than 35 people. So that's why we're asking to reconsider. So part of the terminology, from what I understand, is you're allowed to have a buffet style tables along the front, where basically near the stage, which is on the hardwood floor. So you can serve food there. You can currently, with his suggestion, you can stand on the hardwood floor and eat and drink, but you can't sit down and eat and drink. So our volunteers are saying, please share the pictures, because sitting down like children, when they come for breakfast, the parents bring the food over, kind of set them up on the table, and they sit down and they eat. They don't spill, they don't drip anything. If it's a dance, people are suggesting dark, spilling food, spilling drinks, and so on. It could potentially be more of a mess on the floor than what we're currently doing with our serving. I think that's pretty much all the points I have.
It's good, because your time is almost up,
Almost up.
John. If you've
So
got a
talk really fast.
summation there, that would be great. And then we can entertain questions from council.
Yeah, I just want to see if there's anything I'm kind of missing. Oh, the last thing, which would make it a lot easier in our recommendation, you touched on it when it was presented a while ago. And I think it was you, Reeve Wise, that suggested like photographs when it comes to condition. That's what our group has done since we started renting the hall in November. So we've got volunteers that help set up and take down. And then we have people that come to the games night or come to breakfast, and they will stay and help clean up and mop the floor and so on. So what our volunteer group has done is just automatically made notes and taken pictures. So we always take a picture before we start and a picture or two when we're done. And I think they kind of touched on it in the presentation. Our opinion is the simplest way to do it, to save a lot of time, if you have a basic report that the renter, so let's say I'm renting Enterprise Hall. It's a 2-sided, it's identical on both sides. One is renting the hall, and one is when I'm done renting the hall. So for example, I come in Enterprise today, I want to rent the hall. I do a checklist, a very simple checklist, which we do in our heads. So we go through, the entrance light bulb doesn't work. The main entrance, 1 bulb of 5 work in the front foyer. You just make a note of it. You keep walking. You go in, you go into the kitchen, there's no dish soap, or the dish soap only has 1 inch left. There's no cloths. There's no, say, spray bottle to clean the tables and chairs. So it's a very simple, we had a checklist. I can supply a copy if it makes it easier. A basic checklist of the condition of the building when you go in. If I see something like a burn mark on the floor, I can take a picture of it. It's dated, it's simple. We have our event, the event's over, we clean up. Once again, we go around and we just check off. It makes it easier for whoever the contract cleaner is. So if, so for example, in Tamworth, there's only one washroom because the other ones are being renovated. There's a paper towel dispenser, has a special 2-prong key. The paper towel dispenser jammed up. It wouldn't work. There's no key. So we made a note before we rent next time. We'll ask, I think it's Al, what do we do if that does jam up, just to make a provision. It just make it so much easier. You're not relying on the cleaning staff to go around and do so much extra work. There's no reason why the person that rents the hall can't do a basic report, filling it out. And then the cleaner can refer to it and say, you know what, we need a roll of paper towel and he needs the mop. And it should make it a lot easier, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Questions or comments from council on John's thoughts and ideas? Yes, Rob.
Do you, can you bring the photo back up there that showed the hall in the normal setting? Can you do that for me?
Like one?
I didn't really look at them number wise. The one that shows the hall in the traditional setting.
So 0, 1, I believe is it.
Okay. There you go. I'm very familiar with this facility, like very familiar. And I'm just not sure where you're getting the number of 35 people. I have personally ran my own events and fed over 150. And this one here, coming and going, given, but the seating alone just on the left would be 35, let alone over there. So I'm just not sure where your number is coming from. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, the number, you mean on the left-hand side, stage left?
Yeah,
So
yeah, go ahead.
what I'm referring to is, according to the presentation that is in front of you now, those tables and chairs are not permitted. It's hardwood floor.
So just for your own knowledge,
Yeah.
the reason that those tables and chairs don't damage the floor, and if you take a look, you'll see I have photos of it. They're stationary. The chairs do occasionally slide back and forth, but the tables themselves stay put. When you take all of the seating from the actual space that's designed for it, and you drag it across and set it up on the hardwood and do that repeatedly over and over again, it causes some pretty serious premature wear. And I have the photos to prove it. It's really just not a good idea. It's personal preference is what it is. Right now, the facility set up for this, it's functioned that way very, very well for many, many years. I think we need to keep the stuff off that floor. And I think the ratepayer doesn't want to pay to refinish it every couple months or so. It's not cheap to do.
I'm not sure who would be dragging the floors. Our group has not done any damage on the floors. Secondly, so those tables and chairs are always moved for the cleaning staff. Cleaning staff doesn't leave the tables there. We have photos of, so when let's say we're done that, we're renting that and we're done. So we mop, or sorry, we dust it all, or sweep it, sorry, and then mop it. We don't move the tables and chairs then, but the cleaning contractor does move those tables. They've showed me where they have this cart thing where they move them around. We don't have access to that cart, so our volunteers are very, very careful. I think back in November, Councilmember Fenwick, you were there at the first breakfast that we did. You actually made the comment that you're more than careful in supervising, and you literally watched us move the tables and chairs, stack them, and sweep and mop. You were there at the time. So that practice has never changed. We've done the same thing. Our volunteer group has done that since day one. The reason why I'm bringing it up is based on what Mr. Detler has presented. It states no food for dining, so no tables or chairs are permitted on the hardwood floor. So I think that's where the confusion lies. So they're basically, that's the way it's currently set up. But if it gets passed, unless I misunderstood, the terminology is very specific. It says you cannot sit down to dine on any part of the hardwood floor. Our volunteer group is saying that's a mistake because you've just lost, I think it's 6, no, it should be 4, I believe. I think it's 4 per table, and there's 6 tables down the side. We always have an extra couple of tables, so it's 35 people can eat there. Based on what he's presented to council, you've lost 35. You can't have people sitting there.
I think maybe this can be submitted to Jake for future discussion. It's a draft policy, and these details are probably important ultimately, but I don't think we're going to work them out tonight. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Thanks, John. I did have one question not related to Enterprise Hall. Have you considered registering your charity so that people could get tax receipts and so on?
My wife Julie's an accountant. She's done a little bit of research on that. So far, we haven't, because there's going to be concerns about insurance, and then the overhead gets to be a little more expensive. So right now we have, I don't want to misquote, I think it's $1 million is what we have for coverage right now. It's something we're going to look into, but for now, if there's, so for example, Legacy Center is a registered, so they were able to give receipts. So when we did our first breakfast, and that's what we encourage. So Legacy Center is recognized, they've jumped through the loops, they have all that stuff. So when people were donating the food, the clothing and so on, and the breakfast, if they wanted a receipt, it comes directly from Legacy. So we're basically a facilitator between, right? Is the way I'm looking at it. We're promoting the group, like the Love for Ferals. It created a lot of attention. Most of the people that came weren't aware of what they do. There is no funding for them. So part of what we do is just create awareness, and the other part is obviously donating all the money towards that. So far, everybody with the exception of like the Burke family, that was a tragedy in December or January. So, but anytime there's been Dearborn, same thing. But those folks, we generated $2,400 at that chicken meal. So once again, we would not have been able to have that Valentine's dinner based on what Mr. Detler has presented now, because no dining would be permitted on that hardwood floor. So for our group of volunteers, there's absolutely no function that we could do based on the way that wording is presented right now.
Okay. Your presentation will be forwarded to Jake for consideration in the policy, I'm assuming, Jason. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Could I have a motion to receive? Oh, go ahead, Doug. Yeah.
Mr. Neisman, I hope you understand the intent of what this is all about. Okay. As you found out, the lack of rules, the lack of procedures causes confusion. And sometimes it causes more than confusion. Okay. And that's not the intent of anybody to have problems. There's an old saying, good fences make good neighbors. There's a reason for that. Good rules make good neighbors too. Okay. If we have clear, concise rules, and they're not written yet, so your input tonight will be valued. If we have clear, concise rules and everybody stays within inside those rules, we won't have the confusion that we've had in the past. That's the intent, is just to get something down on paper where people understand what the ground rules are for operating in that facility. And each of the facilities are slightly different because of the type of the makeup of the facilities. Okay, I just hope you understand that. It's not meant to be personal with any particular group or person. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so I agree 100% with rules. And that was part of the confusion that our volunteer group had, because we, to the best of our knowledge, were following all the procedures. We were renting, 3 to 4 times a month. That was putting us in the category, I can't remember what the term is, but frequent renter. One example, without beating it to death, is the key. So our volunteer group did follow the actual rental agreement or contract with the Township of Stone Mills. And there seemed to be some gray area. So I agree with you 100%. Clarifying any gray area or interpretation, and maybe I misunderstood the wording of what's presented now for council to consider. But the way I'm reading it, it's very clear. It says no dining table, so you can't dine and sit down anywhere in Enterprise Hall. And that is, in our opinion, as a volunteer group, is a mistake. It becomes unusable. We can't, so then that means we could never, or anybody similar to us. So I think what you're going to find soon with volunteers is volunteers in terms of groups, they're getting harder and harder to get volunteers. So I think you're going to see someone like, say, a Legion or a Lions getting together with another group to put on perhaps a bigger event, share the volunteers and share the profit they make. I think future down the road, I see that probably as something that's going to happen. Your events have to be larger to draw more people and draw more volunteers, and then the end result is more money for charity. So I think that's something we have to consider. We want the enterprise or any building that you own to be maximized and rented to as many people as possible. When you're talking about community and having people involved, I think it's very important. So I agree with you 100%. Definitely have rules in place, and everybody can abide by those rules. And if you don't, then there's consequences. 100%. I totally agree.
Doug has moved receipt. Can I have a seconder, please? Rob, any further discussion? All in favor? Thanks, Sean. Okay. Staff reports, 8.1. Acting CEO, Manager of Development Services, Sands, Agricultural Land Policy Update. The recommendation is that council receive and review the upcoming decision of the County of Lennox and Addington Council to be considered at the June 19th, 2024 County Council meeting, and the council seek additional public input from the broader community respecting the draft of OP amendment and zoning bylaw amendment following the decision of the county. Can we pre-receive something coming from Lennox and Addington County? Is that what we're suggesting here, or what's the intent of that first part of that motion?
Through you, Reeve Wise, the intent from my position is that we recognize and be transparent with our members of the community that the county council will be making consideration at an upcoming meeting, June 19th, 2024, of a LEAR or AIL study for decision, and that has a bearing on what we would do at a lower tier level moving forward, depending on that decision.
Okay, so we're anticipating a report, and we're basically looking favorably on receiving that report, not approving it necessarily, but we're awaiting it. Is that the intent here?
Yeah, through you, Reeve, it's not looking favorably one way or the other. It's looking favorably to a date, if you will, because we recognize the challenges publicly, politically, and at the staff level in our corporation to this topic, and we're looking for support essentially at the county level, as authored in that letter, and I forget the date, February 28th letter, requesting their support on the completion of a study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I get a mover for that? Sherry and Doug, and Jason, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve Wise, beyond the conversation that we've had to this juncture this evening, the purpose of this report is to simply provide an update, and the update is initiated with the background section of the report that speaks to the chronology dating back to November 29th, 2023, which was last fall, in which the Committee of Adjustment heard some applications for severances or lot creations on lands that are identified under the CLI, Canadian Land Inventory, as Class 1 through 3, up to our statutory public meeting that we held on May 6, which was very recent, and moving forward to what we've just most recently discussed, of course, a subsequent meeting that we're expecting to occur in June at the county level, because that does have bearing, in our opinion, at staff's level, of what our next steps would be at the townships level. And I say that because if the county, as requested, undertakes a LEAR study or an AIL study through their official plan update process, then of course that means the township wouldn't be a recommendation of staff to proceed to township council to undertake such a study, because it would be done at a greater level at county-wide. However, if that decision at the county in June is not, then you would, foreshadowing, you would probably see a recommendation of staff that we complete that study based on lack of in-house expertise to have that completed at the township level to implement across our corporation through an update to our official plan. All that being said, in the meantime, or on the interim, we've provided draft official plan policy and draft official plan update language through Arcadis as it relates to our existing policies. And we've called them or termed them in quote interim measures because we think the most accurate way of completing this assessment is an AILS or a LEAR study. So that's really all I wanted to provide this evening. And again, I do want to acknowledge my error in the report as it relates to public input. There was one received written submission in advance of the public meeting on May 6th. And we do have now this evening, there's been an additional 4 or 5 pieces of written submission, written correspondence. So don't quote me on the number, but we're up around 10 written submissions. We received one this weekend and all of council was copied on that. So we are starting to receive some comment. And you'll also note in this from a staff perspective, the recommendation is that we conduct an additional public meeting. And we have that because we're all cognizant of what we endured on May 6th. It was a full evening of an agenda package. And we didn't, I don't think, allow all members of the community who were in audience participate or feel heard. So for that reason, we do think it's important that we provide the opportunity to our members of the public to provide that opportunity to speak. However, for any member of the community in the audience or watching online, we are still accepting written submissions. So please do provide written submissions. We've drafted policy, we've drafted at the OP level and at the zoning level, and we're seeking that input actively. So I end with that. Thank you, Reeve.
Oh, thanks, Jason. Questions or comments from council? Yes, Chris Lee.
Okay. So in spring of 2023, a few months after we were elected, our Reeve, John Wise, stated the need to develop a policy to protect farmland. We didn't move on it right away, and there was no formal motion that was passed, but we signaled a change that may be coming to this issue. By December, we were informed at council that some committee of adjustment meetings had been full houses, full of people concerned and engaged about the loss of some of the best farmland in the township, the Galbraith farmland in Camden East. Frankly, I believe we were caught flat-footed. We then paid good money for a thorough and professional and well-balanced report that included clear, supported, and well-documented recommendations. We acted upon those recommendations. That was a responsible thing to do. We held a public meeting, and every voice that we heard that night was in favor of protecting farmland. In fact, most people wanted us to go further. Subsequently, we have a report tonight saying that after the public meeting, there were, as far as I can tell, anonymous messages. Now, I know one, I do know who it is from, received expressing a different opinion. But I don't believe we can be writing public policy based on backroom conversations. We can't flip-flop on crucial policy questions. We can't give the impression that we have a policy proposal until someone makes a call and then we're flip-flopping again. We need to provide a clear and consistent policy that is supported by the report that we paid good money for. We talked about protecting farmland, yet we were slow to act. More than a year has gone by, and in that time, there has been a rush to file severances. Now that we have a policy, I believe we need to move forward, because if we start to flip-flop, we're going to see a wave of speculators and developers swooping to take advantage of the situation. And rather than protecting farmland, we will be complicit in its loss. And when we lose farmland, it's gone forever. Tonight's report also says that there's a question mark over the views of the agricultural community on these matters. I don't believe there's any uncertainty or ambiguity about the views of the agricultural organizations that represent local farmers on farmland protection. Let me quote from a letter we previously received from Leonard Austin, which he stated, "When agricultural land is developed, it is lost forever." He added that, quote, "The protection of Ontario's prime agricultural lands for the long-term agricultural use must be a key objective for Lennox and Addington County." The Lennox and Addington Federation of Agriculture is the largest farming organization representing local farmers in Stone Mills Township. We also received letters from the National Farmers Union, the Christian Farmers Association of Ontario, and these organizations represent the voices of their members. The proposal is not a perfect policy solution. We adopted this policy as a temporary measure instead of bolder measures like a complete moratorium. I think this is a fair and reasonable policy, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And the issue is too important to wait to act. We have time to hear more from the public as we go and update our strategic plan, and we can hear from a diverse range of voices to inform a vision of the future and the role of farming in our community. But to do that, we need to make sure that there's farmland left to talk about. And I do understand that there has been sort of a lack or feeling of a lack of public information, but I was just thinking back to the September Committee of Adjustment. There were people in the public and they were saying that they really felt that no one in the community knew what was going on. And at the time, the response was, we have met all the legal requirements. And here we've met all the legal requirements. So is it ideal, the level of engagement? Perhaps not. But again, the issue of flip-flopping, I think, is it leaves us at risk, I think, for farmland lost.
Anyone else? Okay, that's, I guess, one way to assess the situation. I'm questioning the term flip-flopping. Do you want to elaborate on what you're implying by that?
I mean that we had a report, we paid Acatus to do the report. Out of it came two recommendations. One is the Lear and Ale study, which we're pursuing. The other was around this policy. We held the public meeting, we've heard from the public, and now we're saying, don't proceed. And so my worry is that if we seem to be like, we're acting on farmland, oh no, we're not, oh we are, we're not, that's going to cause a severance escalation, and that could put us in a position we do not want to be in. That's kind of my fear.
Okay.
And I know I don't, those words are not the best, but that just around that indecision, I think that may get us outcomes we don't want.
Yeah. Well, my impression was that the interim proposal was thoroughly trashed by the public input, and that's why we're taking a step back, is to consider their comments. I don't regard that as flip-flopping. I regard that as actually considering the public opinion that we received. Jason, do you want to address that? Perhaps I'm mischaracterizing the situation, but that was my impression.
Through you, Reeve Wise, I don't have a lot to add aside from like you, was taken back by the public meeting comments we heard. One of the comments we heard at the public meeting was that if we passed this proposed official plan amendment and zoning amendment, that they would appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And to be 100% truthful, I was perplexed. The proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are to instill rigor on lands that currently don't have that rigor built into them from a prime agricultural designation. So I am remaining at a loss as to why we would have received such comment. I agree with Reeve Wise in that I don't think the statutory public meeting was well received by the members of the community as it relates to what measure we would implement. And for that reason, in addition to hearing from other ratepayers subsequent to that meeting, that we hold an additional public meeting or garner additional input via a form that's more than a 1 hour or whatever the time frame might have been, to allow for additional opportunity to speak.
Any other comment at this point? Yes, go ahead.
Just when you put it that way, it does sound very reasonable. And my only suggestion would be this next farmland meeting that we make it just about farmlands, and that there has to be some, like, again, some of the language, which I know is mentioned in the report, was unclear. And I think there was that feeling of miscommunication. So I think it has to be clearly defined. It has one objective, and we see how many voices we can hear, I guess.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
And just a quick one, John. I think you've got it accurately. And again, I don't want to speak for anybody else at this table, but definitely the protection of class 1-3 soils is something I think that everybody agrees with. But I also think that our job is not to simply give people false hope and snap our fingers and put forward something that doesn't have legs. And I think that that's the moment of pause we're looking for, to find out if we do something, is it actually going to work in the interim until we get a more permanent solution. And I think that's hard to sit and hear the demands for us to snap our fingers. But we do understand that it has to be real, or it isn't real. And isn't real gets overturned and appealed, and it comes with a big fat lawyer bill that hits all the ratepayers of Stone Mills right between the eyes. And I just don't think that's fair. So we're all on board, I believe, with preventing the erosion of ag lands, but it has to be done at a pace that actually is real. And that's my thought of it. So I'm really glad. Thank you for your guidance, John, on that.
Thanks, Rob. Anyone else? I'd like to get a little bit into the question that Wayne raised, because this is something I have been curious about. All that tour that went on way back in the early 2000s of various agricultural properties happened when I was either not on council for a term or a rather naive younger councillor. And I really have no recollection of it at the time. Doug, I don't remember if you were on council at the time either. And that's not to exonerate anyone. It's just that's how it was. It was primarily a committee of adjustment undertaking, as I recall. But regardless of the personal circumstances, I think it was perfectly legitimate to raise the issue of how that determination came about, whether it was legal or correct. But Wayne asked, is current township ag policy or zoning or committee of adjustment procedure based really on Ray Velitis, an OMAFRA employee of the time, on his say-so, on his suggestion? My impression is that the answer to that would have to be no. Ultimately, yes, but his evaluations were submitted to OMAFRA, reviewed, accepted, then moved on to Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as these things do take place, ultimately incorporated into the, I believe, 2014 official plan, and subsequently incorporated into the 2016 Lennox and Addington County official plan. We cannot wipe that slate clean. It has gone through, based on whatever misapprehensions at those ministries may have taken place at the time, based on their official evaluation, review, and approval. In order to change that, we have to go through all the procedures and steps that would be taken to do any official plan amendment, which we have commenced with our request to the County of Lennox and Addington to undertake the Lear or Ailes study and whatever else is required. Have I summarized that correctly? And please correct anything I've left out or gotten wrong in that summation, in your professional opinion, Jason.
Thank you, Reeve-Wise. No, I think it's very concise and well said, Reeve-Wise. The only thing I would like to add is the most recent policy document that's been approved with this mapping, and that's been our township official plan. And I think this this sitting of council will recall that we've recently approved a township official plan. Before the county level across the town, across the province had authority to approve official plans, it was done by MMAH. That was delegated to the counties when a county had its own official plan. So this is our first time at our local level in which the County of Lennox and Addington has been the approval authority for our official plan. And our most recent, it's a 2023 approved official plan, was approved by the County of Lennox and Addington, which is a delegatory authority of the MMAH, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, for this type of policy review. And this policy review included schedules, Schedule A, rural designation versus prime ag designation. And it was approved legally through that process. So how it happened in whichever date, it's been approved multiple times since that initial review, and the most recent being approximately less than a year ago, and in the fall of 2023.
Thanks, Jason. Anything else at this point? So in terms of next steps, we're waiting for the county report to come to the June meeting. That will then come back to us for for consideration, and we'll determine next steps and when we have a subsequent public meeting on the issue. I'm hoping in the meantime that given some of our back and forth this evening during the 3-minute delegations and anything you've heard subsequently during the meeting, that you will continue to comment and that we can have a productive relationship, because as we've stated and as Crystal Lee read out from the OFA, everyone wants to protect farmland. The way we do it is the devil's in the details, as usually with complex issues that involve 3 levels of government plus the public. So I'm hoping that we can proceed in a spirit of cooperation and look forward to ideas from the public. Anything further on this report? Rob, go ahead.
One quick little thing in the letter that from Lennox and Addison Federation of Agricultural, the very last paragraph reads, "We recognize the balancing act between farmland protection and further urbanization does not come with a quick or easy answer, and that the issues facing us today are complex." This is coming from the people that are the most deeply involved in it. They recognize this is not easy for us and it's not quick. So let's take our time and do it right. That's my theory.
Thanks, Rob. Crystal?
Just to respond to that, the Lennox Natting Federation of Agriculture, they did say, I hope this staff report is overturned in the email to me. So they are in support of something being done sooner rather than later. And the other thing I wanted to say, do we have to wait until the June 19th county meeting to set a public meeting? Can we set one now? You would have a better idea of when farmers might be available, but I don't want to necessarily.
December.
I know, with September, when this was coming up, the Committee of Adjustment would have been a great time. But I don't want to wait a month before we set a date if we want to make sure that people have the time to be informed, right? Because often people they don't find out to the last minute. So I wouldn't mind if we were to set a date on a public meeting now, rather than waiting for that result, because our recommendation in the report is to pursue the Ailes and Layers, but also that to have a stopgap measure. It is not wait until the Ailes and Layers and then implement. It's like, we need to do something now, and hopefully we can get these studies under the county. So I would be open to us setting a date or a rough idea of a date for that we can try to promote in advance instead of, down the line.
Through your revise, from a staff perspective, Councillor Woodcock, I've no concern with advancing a public meeting for additional public input in advance of that decision of County Council. And that's sort of echoed through comments that we're sort of requesting as this is ongoing in written form. It just doesn't happen to be in a public setting. If, and I say if, because it sounds as though there's some concern from the members of the public that we did not meet our statutory obligations with respect to the last public meeting, then we can schedule that meeting with a minimum of a 20-day public notice period, with doing a very similar circulation. That can still happen before June 19th. But I just wanted to inform you of that it would be an additional public notice process.
I just want to say, don't necessarily saying that we have to have the meeting before June 19th, but I'd like us to set a date, and it's even if it's more than 20 days notice, so that we can inform the public, just have a little more time to have those conversations happening.
So it would seem that we should have it after we get that report. Why don't you look at what sort of time you would need after getting that report? Like a week after that, or like, yeah, like sort of last week of June kind of thing. We could just have a special public meeting, nothing else on the agenda about laundromats or anything else that took up way more time than I expected. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just consider options, send out some choices for council, and we don't have to have a meeting to agree on a meeting. Okay. Anyone else on this issue? I think I got a mover and seconder. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Treasurer. Oh, sorry. Did I miss one? Blue Box program. Yeah. Oh, the Blue Box program. No wonder I wanted to skip that. Okay. So the government is attempting to bring producer responsibility for recyclables into effect, which is admirable. the way they're doing it is questionable, but that's a political comment. Strike that from the record. The recommendation is that council receives a report entitled Blue Box Program Transition Introduction for Information, and that council acknowledges that further information will be provided at the June 3rd, 24 council meeting, at which time a decision respecting townships opting in or opting out will be required. Can I get a mover and seconder to put that on the floor, please, Sherry and Doug? Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Reeve Wise. My first comment is I apologize. This report's 3 years late. It should not be 2024. It should have been 2021, if not 2019. We've got ourselves in a position that we need to make a decision within about 2 weeks of whether we're opting in or opting out. And the information that we've compiled is before you this evening, with hopes that we can get ourselves up to speed without having a lot of background information on it in a relatively short order. I am happy to answer any questions that I may be able to answer. I am definitely not a subject matter expert. And again, I apologize for the tardiness with respect to the item on the agenda.
Any questions, Doug?
Jason, I realize you won't be able to answer this question, but if you wouldn't mind, take it back. As I went through the process, one of the things that jumped out at me real clear on our depot system that we use, okay, was the contamination issue, 4%. That immediately scared me because I don't know how we can guarantee 4%. I don't know if we have any records of what our current contamination level is. I do know that every once in a while we get a container full back. Okay, it's kind of an average deal, I think, is how they work. But we need to really look into that one and what cost would be involved if we exceeded the 4% to us. And I hope we got some kind of records on that. I hope so.
Doug, anyone else? Well, this has been a long time coming, and now all of a sudden it's imminent. It might be good to touch base with some of our neighbors that don't have garbage pickup. There are a few, and see what they're considering, Jason. Yeah, and maybe Rideau Lakes, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm not 100% confident. I know Tynanega, a relative of mine lives in Tynanega, and they do not have garbage pickup, so I know that one. But I will reach out.
Yeah. Anything else? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Jason. Now our treasurer. Annual investment summary. Recommendation that council receives the annual investment report from the treasurer for information only. Is there anything you wanted to add to this, Anita? It's pretty straightforward, but you're welcome to comment on it.
Through you, Revise. No, I believe all the information is in the report, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions for Anita? So do we actually deal with an investment counselor, or do we just basically buy GICs?
Through you, Revise. We have CIBC Wood Gundy, which we have been with for, I believe, since 2003. For investment purposes, we actually meet quarterly via Zoom, and we get monthly or quarterly reports on how our investment is doing.
So some of them are in mutual funds, but it's a guaranteed rate. Is that how it works?
Exactly. The local government and municipalities are mandated quite heavily on what we can invest in our money.
We can't play the stock market.
No, we cannot.
Can we access those mutual funds information on our website, or how would we look at it? I'm just curious what our money's doing.
Through you, Revise, you'd have to just put in a request. I download the information and we have them in a file. So if you're interested.
Yeah, I am. Okay. Anyone else, any questions on that? Did I get a mover and seconder? Sorry, Doug and Sherry, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. And Anita, you're still on the firing line, accounts payable rather, policy. The council received the report titled Accounts Payable Policy, and that bylaw 2024 to be numbered, being a bylaw to adopt an accounts payable policy be enacted and passed, and the Reeve and clerk be authorized to sign and seal. Can I get a mover and seconder to put that on the floor, please? Sherry and Krista Lee. Anita, any comment?
Through you, Reeve Weiss. No, this is just amending our 2019 accounts payable to include additional methods of payments pre-authorized. We would like to implement input EFTs for transfers and hopefully save some money with postage and envelopes and checks and staff time.
Any questions or comments? Yeah, it's just modernized. So people could, so you could pay with an Interact transfer if you wanted, or put someone on a bank payable kind of thing, all that sort of thing. In terms of accounts receivable, we don't have as many of those, but we certainly do for tax time. Are the options for paying taxes just check or cash, or can people pay by Interact now or credit card?
Through you, Reeve Weiss, we currently on our webpage have multiple ways to pay, not for property taxes. We recommend that you pay through your bank online banking because the information comes through us directly and we can upload it into our system. We're also, you can pay Interact check and cash at the main office. We do have other options for paying different programs and fees on our website that you can automatically pay through credit card as well.
Anyone else? Thanks, Anita. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Surplus equipment, is that our next one, Randy? Yeah. This is a recommendation that council receive the report entitled Surplus Equipment, and that council declares the respecting items in Table A surplus and approves disposal of the assets. Acting Fire Chief James Richmond, this is your report. Is there anything you wish to highlight?
Thank you, Reeve Weiss. Through you, I would like to add one more item to Table A, which is Unit 0306, which is a public works vehicle. Recently, during some repairs, it was found to have some structural issues with the frame. And in the opinion of the fleet manager, it's no longer viable to be fixed and used. It's actually due for replacement this year anyways, is in the budget to be replaced. So he would like to add that to the list as well. Other than that, the only thing I'd like to draw your attention to is with the disposals of the ESCBAs. As you knew, through budget time, we budgeted to replace our existing SCBAs, which were coming to end of life. So based on some of my research of different departments disposing of SCBAs, there's not a great market for them. But there is organizations that will take these and donate them to other departments in need around the world, third world countries. The Ukraine is an example as well. So areas where there's issues going on where they can't access equipment. So instead of just putting them up on the GovDeals auction site and garnering a small amount of money, I thought this would be a good way to give back and sort of pay it forward and extending the use of that through, really highly needed piece of equipment in the firefighting world to a country in need. So.
I think it's a great idea. Any comments, Rob?
Yeah, I think that's great. I was reading that, and as you mentioned, you know, the potential of $2,500 if sold through auction, that doesn't take into account staff time collecting them, photos, putting up, and then paying the auction fees. So really, what is the net on that? It's probably not a lot. Is there any way if we do that, which I think is a great idea, and thanks for bringing it up, can we specify Ukraine in that? Or is that something you can do?
Through your rewise, I believe that we would donate it to that organization and then they would give it to the organization that's in most need. So perhaps if Ukraine needs it, but perhaps if there's another disaster in another area of the world that they may need it as well. So
I suppose it's all the same, isn't it?
Anyone else?
I support that in my heart.
Yeah.
There's countries in the world that you wouldn't believe how poor their firefighting services are. The reason that we're disposing of them is our safety standards. That doesn't mean the equipment doesn't work. And it's gold to some places. You got places like Cuba where they don't even have alarm systems. They stand just park on a block and somebody runs to them and says there's a fire, whatever. There's lots of places in the world that would be. There's even places in Canada between you and me that might value this equipment. Yeah, Newfoundland and some of the outports and that sort of stuff. But it's valuable to unorganized organizations. Yep.
Okay, anything further? All in favor? Did I get it? Moving second? Okay, Doug's gonna get it. Sherry seconded it. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Shane.
thank you.
Yes, yeah, with the addition of that unit. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay. Committee and board reports. Anyone have anything? Any items for consideration? Nothing listed. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, there is. And this is a request as written on behalf of the school council at Newburgh Public School in hopes that you might consider supporting us to continue to enrich the lives of children who attend the school. Your support of our main fundraising event, our school fun fair, is a great way to show the community that you continue to support the families and youth that live and work here. We're asking for any donation that might be used towards a raffle or silent auction. If you'd like to provide a monetary gift, we can purchase an item and acknowledge your contribution in that way. Our fun fair is supported by over 100 families in the area, and your support would be widely noted. Your generosity is deeply appreciated, as we are keenly aware that businesses are called upon regularly to support many worthwhile causes, and feel grateful that you are, like others, willing to make ours one of them. So I think last year we had a donation, Brandy, you were saying?
Last year, the year before, a composter.
A composter we donated. So is there any willingness to entertain this request? Yeah? Any ideas as to what we might donate?
We haven't got any of this $50 value, $75 value.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Does that meet with consensus? So $75? We still got money in the donation budget, do we? Anita said yes. It's a go. All right. Do you need a motion? Can I get a mover and seconder? Doug and Rob, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. New business and statements. What do we got? Oh, yes. Sorry. The Ontario Land Tribunal. This is the items for information. The council received the Ontario Land Tribunal minutes of settlement for information. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Doug and Rob, any discussion? We've been over this many times, so this is just the final chapter on this. Jason, is that right?
Yeah, thank you, Reeve Wise. A verbal decision was rendered at the hearing itself. However, this is the written decision dated May 7th, confirming that it was approved, and the conditions that were imposed by the municipality are included within the decision. So for a severance application and a minor variance application, these are very standard conditions that you would see for any other development in the area. And they've been imposed to this applicant, so they have to fulfill all those conditions before final approval is garnered. It just came in a somewhat different way through the Ontario Land Tribunal. So we just wanted to make sure council was aware of that, and the final decision has been rendered. Thanks.
Jason, any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. New business, statements from members.
Just got a quick one, John. And I don't want this to be a burden on staff by any means. Just it could actually be an email later. I've just had some people inquiring, some constituents inquiring about brush and leaves disposable on landfill sites. I know we're trying to extend the life of our landfills. I'm aware of the numbers. They're shocking as to what it costs to close these and then maintain them afterwards and monitor them. But it is a curiosity question. I know that we pay to have brush chipped at our landfills, and it's not cheap. But I couldn't accurately answer the questions, so I thought I would bring it forward. And I know some surrounding municipalities charge nothing for these sort of things, but maybe they have a different setup. It doesn't mean that everything's created equal. So the person that inquired was respectful and just really wanted to know. And I think that's wonderful when you get an actual genuine inquiry and not just someone yelling at you. So I would like to know myself. So I thought maybe, I'm sure Ian's got lots of spare time, but maybe someone could just advise me, and potentially, or treasurer, maybe even as simple as that, as to how much we paid to have these items chipped last year. And that might be enough for people to understand why we have to charge $20 a load and why we don't take things like leaves. I can't answer it myself, so I'd like to know.
If I may revise, it's a great question, Councillor Fenwick. We, as you can appreciate, don't have the answer before us tonight. However, we're committed to get that answer out to you. And if acceptable of council, it'd be an email to all of council for awareness as opposed to a report back to council.
That would be good, because this issue raises its head every month or two, and there seems to be some confusion. And to a certain extent, it seems a bit subjective, depending on how high it's piled and the size of the truck and so on. So some clarification would be welcome. Anyone else? Statements from members? Business? Nothing declared. In that case, I will entertain a motion to enter closed meeting pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act. The reason for the closed meeting, the council consider employee negotiations and labor relations. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Krista Lee and Sherry, all in favor? That's carried. We'll take a short break before we enter the meeting, because we've got to get offline